Eleanor McAllister dropped to her knees in the dirt, her fingers trembling as she gathered the last coins scattered across the dusty floor of her father's cabin. $3.47. That was everything she had left in this world. The bank wanted $200 by Friday, or the ranch her daddy built with his bare hands would be gone forever. She pressed those coins against her chest and whispered into the empty room, "I'm sorry, Pa. I tried." But Eleanor didn't know that tomorrow a stranger's broken wagon wheel would change everything. If you want to see how one act of kindness transforms Eleanor's life, subscribe to my channel and follow her story until the very end. Drop a comment below telling me which city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far Eleanor's journey has traveled. The summer heat pressed down on the Montana territory like a wool blanket soaked in sweat. Eleanor wiped her forehead with the back of her hand and stared at the letter crumpled in her fist. "Final notice," she read aloud, her voice cracking. "Payment required by August 15th, or foreclosure proceedings will commence." She threw the letter onto the table and walked to the window. Outside, the land stretched golden and dry under the August sun. Her father's land. Her land. The only thing she had left of him. 3 years, Pa," she whispered. 3 years I've been fighting for this place." A knock rattled the cabin door. Eleanor straightened her shoulders and crossed the room. When she pulled the door open, Martha Jenkins stood on the porch, her silver hair pinned beneath a faded bonnet, her eyes full of worry. "Ellie, honey." Martha stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "I heard about the bank notice." News travels fast in Copper Creek. "Small town." Martha set a wrapped bundle on the table. "Brought you some bread. Fresh this morning." Eleanor stared at the bundle. Her throat tightened. "Martha, I can't keep taking—" "Hush now." Martha pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. "Your mama was my dearest friend. I promised her I'd look after you. So you'll take the bread and you'll eat it." Eleanor managed a small smile. "Yes, ma'am." "Now sit down and tell me what you're planning to do." Eleanor sank into the chair across from Martha. She picked at a splinter on the table's edge. "I don't rightly know. Bank wants $200. I got $3 and change." "What about selling some cattle?" "Sold the last of them 2 months ago. Paid off the spring loan." Eleanor laughed bitterly. "Thought I was being smart. Thought I'd have time to rebuild the herd before winter." Martha reached across the table and took Eleanor's hand. "There's folks in town who'd help if you asked. I ain't asking for charity. Pride's a fine thing, Ellie, but it don't keep a roof over your head." Eleanor pulled her hand away gently. "Pa built this ranch from nothing. He didn't ask nobody for help. I won't neither." Martha sighed deeply. "You're stubborn as a mule child, just like Thomas was. Reckon that's the only inheritance he left me that the bank can't take." They sat in silence for a moment. The summer wind pushed through the open window, carrying the smell of dry grass and dust. "There's something else," Martha said carefully. "Silas Garrett came by the restaurant yesterday." Eleanor's jaw tightened. "What'd he want?" "Asked about you. About the ranch. Said he'd be willing to buy the land outright, pay off your debts, and give you enough to start fresh somewhere else." "I'd rather burn this place to the ground than sell it to that snake." "I told him you'd say that." Martha smiled slightly. "But Ellie, you should know he's been buying up land all over the valley. 3 families already sold to him this summer. He's got something planned, and I don't think it's good for any of us." Eleanor stood up and walked back to the window. "Let him plan whatever he wants. This ranch ain't for sale. Even if you lose it to the bank." The question hung in the air like smoke. Eleanor didn't answer. The next afternoon, Eleanor rode her mare Copper along the dusty road toward town. She needed to check the general store for any mail, and maybe if she swallowed her pride enough, ask Mr. Patterson about work. The sun beat down mercilessly. Sweat trickled down her back beneath her worn cotton dress. She'd left her hat at home, and now she regretted it. Should have waited till evening, she muttered to Copper. The horse flicked her ears in response. About 3 miles from town, Eleanor spotted something unusual on the road ahead. A wagon sat crooked at the roadside, one wheel clearly broken. A man knelt beside it examining the damage. Eleanor slowed Copper to a walk. The man looked up at the sound of hooves. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark coat that seemed too fine for traveling dusty Montana roads. Silver streaked his dark hair at the temples. His face was weathered but handsome, with deep-set brown eyes that studied her carefully. "Afternoon, ma'am." He tipped his hat politely. "Afternoon?" Eleanor stopped Copper a few feet away. "Trouble?" "Wheel cracked clean through." He gestured at the damage. "Hit a rock about a mile back. Didn't think much of it until the whole thing gave out." Eleanor dismounted and walked closer. The wheel was badly damaged. 3 spokes snapped, the rim split along the grain. "That's a mess," she said. "Yes, ma'am, it surely is." The man wiped his hands on a handkerchief. "I got tools in the wagon, but I ain't much good with repairs like this. Spent my life working cattle, not wood." Eleanor circled the wheel slowly. She'd fixed plenty of wagon wheels for her father over the years. This one was bad, but not impossible. "You headed to Copper Creek?" she asked. "Was planning on it. Got business there tomorrow." "Town's still 3 miles out. Even if you patch this wheel, it won't hold that far." The man nodded grimly. "That's what I was afraid of." Eleanor chewed her lip, thinking. She could leave him here. Wasn't her problem. She had enough troubles of her own without taking on a stranger's. But her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Ellie girl, the measure of a person ain't what they do when folks are watching. It's what they do when nobody's around to see." She sighed. "I can fix it. Temporarily at least. Enough to get you to town where the blacksmith can do it proper." The man's eyebrows rose. "You can fix wagon wheels?" "Mister, I can fix just about anything that breaks on a ranch." Eleanor walked to Copper and retrieved a coil of rope from her saddlebag. "My pa taught me." "Well, I'd be mighty grateful." He extended his hand. "Name's Samuel Brennan. Folks call me Sam." Eleanor shook his hand. His grip was firm but gentle. "Eleanor McAllister. Folks call me Ellie." "Pleased to meet you, Miss McAllister." "It's just Ellie." She knelt beside the wheel and began examining the damage more closely. "And I ain't married, so it's Miss, but that sounds too formal for fixing wagon wheels in the dirt." Sam chuckled softly. It was a warm sound. "Fair enough, Ellie." She worked in silence for several minutes, testing the spokes, examining the rim. Sam crouched nearby, watching her with undisguised curiosity. "You know what you're doing?" he observed. "Told you. Pa taught me everything." Eleanor found a sturdy branch near the road and pulled out her knife. "He used to say a woman alone in the West needed to know how to survive without depending on any man." "Sounds like a wise man." "He was." Eleanor's voice softened. "Passed 3 years ago." "I'm sorry." "Thank you." She began cutting the branch into sections, her knife moving with practiced precision. Sam watched her hands work. "You run his ranch now?" he asked. "What's left of it?" Eleanor didn't look up. "Time's been hard. Drought 2 summers back killed half the herd. Had to sell the rest just to keep the bank happy." "That's a tough road." "Ain't the road I'd have chosen, but it's the one I got." She fitted a piece of branch against the broken spoke and began wrapping it tightly with rope. "Hand me that smaller piece of wood there." Sam picked it up and placed it in her hand. Their fingers brushed briefly. Eleanor pretended not to notice. "You live around here?" she asked, keeping her voice casual. "Got a spread about 40 miles north, near the Judith River." Eleanor paused her work. "That's Brennan land, one of the biggest cattle operations in the territory." "Yes, ma'am." She looked up at him sharply. "You're that Samuel Brennan, the cattle baron." Sam shifted uncomfortably. "I don't much care for that term." Eleanor laughed despite herself. "Well, Mr. Cattle Baron, what are you doing traveling these roads alone, without even a ranch hand to help you?" Sometimes a man needs to think. Hard to do that with 20 cowboys asking questions every 5 minutes. "Must be nice to have that many people to bother you." "It ain't always what folks imagine." Sam's voice grew quiet. Big house, empty rooms, plenty of hands to work the land, but nobody to... He trailed off. Eleanor looked at him for a long moment. Something in his eyes reminded her of her own reflection, the loneliness that came from loss, the weight of carrying everything alone. She returned to her work. "Well, whoever's waiting for you in Copper Creek, this wheel should get you there." "Nobody's waiting for me. Just had business with the bank. Papers to sign." Eleanor's hands stilled. "The bank, Silas Garrett's bank." "That's the one. You know him." "Everybody knows him." Eleanor's voice hardened. "He's been trying to buy my ranch for 2 years. Every time I fall behind on payments, he shows up at my door with that snake smile of his, offering to take my troubles away." "You don't trust him." "Mister, I wouldn't trust Silas Garrett to tell me the sun was shining if I was standing in broad daylight." Sam was quiet for a moment. "Interesting." "What's interesting?" "Just interesting." He didn't elaborate. Eleanor finished securing the makeshift repair and stood up, brushing dirt from her dress. "That should hold long enough to reach town. But don't push the horses hard and avoid any more rocks." "Yes, ma'am." Sam stood too towering over her by nearly a foot. "I'm in your debt." "No, you ain't. Just being neighborly." Sam reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a small leather pouch. The weight of it suggested coins, plenty of them. "Please," he said, offering it to her, "for your trouble." Eleanor stared at the pouch. Her mind raced through calculations, how much might be inside, how far it could go toward the bank payment, how much pride cost when you were 3 days from losing everything. She shook her head. "I didn't help you for money." "I know. That's why I want to give it to you." "That don't make sense." "Most kindness don't." Sam pressed the pouch toward her again. "Please." Eleanor stepped back. "My pa always said kindness given freely was worth more than gold. Reckon that means kindness that takes payment ain't kindness at all. Just transaction." Sam lowered the pouch slowly. His expression shifted surprise, then respect, then something deeper that Eleanor couldn't quite name. "Your father taught you well." "He taught me to work hard, help folks when I could, and never take what I didn't earn." Eleanor untied Copper and swung into the saddle. "You have a safe journey, Mr. Brennan." "Sam?" "Sam." She nodded once. "Good luck with your business." "Miss McAllister Ellie." Sam stepped forward. "Might I ask where your ranch is in case I want to properly thank you sometime?" Eleanor hesitated. Common sense said not to tell a stranger where she lived. But something about this man, the kindness in his eyes, the loneliness that mirrored her own, made her trust him. "McAllister Ranch, about 4 miles west of town past the old Miller Creek. There's a wooden arch over the entrance with my pa's brand burned into it. You can't miss it." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Place ain't much to look at these days." "I imagine it's more than you give it credit for." Eleanor didn't know how to respond to that. So she simply tipped her head, turned Copper toward town, and rode away. She didn't look back. That evening, Eleanor sat on her porch as the sun sank toward the mountains. The air had finally cooled, carrying the scent of sage and wildflowers. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. She replayed the encounter in her mind. Samuel Brennan, the cattle baron. One of the richest men in Montana Territory, kneeling in the dirt with a broken wagon wheel, talking to her like she was his equal, instead of a struggling ranchwoman, 1 step away from losing everything. "Strange day," she said to nobody. Copper nickered softly from the small corral. "Yeah, girl. Strange day indeed." Eleanor went inside, ate the last of Martha's bread with some dried beef, and fell into a restless sleep, filled with dreams of wagon wheels and silver-streaked hair and kind brown eyes that seemed to see right through her. Morning came too bright and too early. Eleanor was hauling water from the well when she heard something that made her freeze mid-step. Wagon wheels, coming up the road, moving slow. She set down the bucket and walked around the side of the cabin, shading her eyes against the rising sun. A wagon approached, but not just any wagon. A large, elegant wagon with polished wood sides and a matched pair of strong draft horses pulling it steadily forward. It was the kind of wagon that belonged to wealthy merchants or territorial officials, not to the rutted dirt roads of McAllister Ranch. Eleanor's heart began to pound. The wagon stopped at the wooden arch. The driver, an older man with silver hair and a trim gray beard, climbed down carefully. He wore a fine suit, dusty from travel, but obviously expensive. Eleanor walked toward him slowly, her hand instinctively moving toward the knife at her belt. "Miss McAllister." The man's voice was polite, cultured. "Who's asking?" "My name is Harold Benson. I work for Mr. Samuel Brennan." He reached into his coat and withdrew a folded letter sealed with dark wax. "Mr. Brennan asked me to deliver this to you personally." Eleanor stared at the letter. "What is it?" "I couldn't say, ma'am. I was simply instructed to bring the wagon and the letter." "The wagon." Harold gestured toward the loaded cargo behind him. Eleanor looked for the first time. The wagon bed was full, stacked lumber, coils of new rope, tools, hammers, saws, nails, things she'd needed for years and couldn't afford, sacks of grain, barrels marked with supplier stamps, equipment for fence repairs. Her breath caught. "Mr. Brennan wanted you to have these supplies," Harold said. "No conditions, no payment expected." "That's..." Eleanor couldn't find words. "That's impossible." "I assure you, ma'am, it's quite real. Mr. Brennan was very specific." Harold pressed the letter into her numb hands. "He also hopes you'll read this. He said it would explain." Eleanor broke the seal with trembling fingers. "Miss McAllister, yesterday you showed me something I haven't seen in a long time. Kindness without expectation. You helped a stranger on the road and refused payment because you believed that was simply the right thing to do. I've met many people in my years of building my ranch. Most want something. Most see opportunity before they see people. You saw a man with a broken wheel and stopped to help because that's who you are. I can't repay kindness like that with money, but I can offer something practical. These supplies are not charity. They're recognition. Your father would be proud of the woman you've become. There is one more thing I wish to discuss with you, an opportunity that might interest us both. If you're willing, I'll be at the Copper Creek Hotel tomorrow afternoon. Room 12. I hope you'll consider hearing what I have to say. Respectfully, Samuel Brennan." Eleanor read the letter twice, 3 times. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She looked up at Harold, then at the wagon full of supplies, then at the wooden arch bearing her father's brand, then at the struggling ranch that had consumed every ounce of her strength for 3 years. "This is real," she whispered. "Yes, ma'am. He really sent all this because I fixed his wagon wheel." Harold smiled gently. "Mr. Brennan said you'd have trouble believing it. He also said to tell you that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness travel farther than anyone imagines." Eleanor pressed the letter against her chest, right where she'd held those $3.47 just 2 days ago. "I don't understand," she said softly. "Perhaps Mr. Brennan can explain better than I can." Harold tipped his hat. "The supplies are yours, Miss McAllister. Do with them what you will." He climbed back onto the wagon seat, turned the horses around, and drove back down the dusty road toward town. Eleanor stood alone beneath her father's arch, clutching a letter from a stranger who somehow saw value in a woman the rest of the world had forgotten. The morning sun climbed higher. Somewhere inside her chest, something that had been closed for a very long time began slowly to crack open. Eleanor spent the rest of that morning unloading the wagon supplies by herself, her mind spinning with every crate she carried. She stacked the lumber against the barn wall. She counted the tools twice, then a third time, convinced she must be dreaming. Hammers, saws, a full set of blacksmith nails, rope enough to fence the entire north pasture. "What kind of man does this?" she muttered, setting down a heavy sack of grain. Copper watched her from the corral ears, flicking curiously. "Don't look at me like that. I don't understand it neither." By noon, Eleanor had read Samuel Brennan's letter so many times the paper was soft from handling. She sat on the porch step, turning it over in her hands, studying his handwriting. Bold strokes, confident but not arrogant. An opportunity that might interest us both. "What opportunity?" she asked the empty air. "What could a man like that possibly want from someone like me?" The answer that kept circling back made her uncomfortable. She'd heard stories about wealthy men and their opportunities for desperate women. Her stomach turned at the thought. But something about Samuel Brennan didn't fit that picture. The way he'd looked at her on the road, there'd been respect in his eyes, not hunger. And that loneliness she'd recognized. That was real. "Only one way to find out," she said finally. She stood up, brushed the dust from her dress, and went inside to find something decent to wear. Eleanor arrived at the Copper Creek Hotel just past 2 o'clock. She'd put on her Sunday dress, faded blue cotton, with small white flowers along the hem, and pinned her auburn hair up properly for the first time in weeks. She felt ridiculous, like a child playing dress-up. The hotel lobby was quiet. A young clerk behind the desk looked up when she entered, his eyebrows rising slightly at the sight of a ranchwoman in worn boots standing on the polished wooden floor. "Can I help you, miss?" "I'm here to see Mr. Brennan. Room 12. The clerk's expression shifted immediately, surprise, then something like respect. "Of course, right this way." He led her up a narrow staircase and down a hallway. At room 12, he knocked twice. "Come in." The clerk opened the door and stepped aside. Eleanor walked through. Samuel Brennan stood by the window, his back to the door. He turned when she entered, and his face broke into a genuine smile. "Miss McAllister, thank you for coming." "Didn't have much choice." Eleanor stopped just inside the doorway. "A man sends a wagon full of supplies to my ranch. I reckon I owe him the courtesy of hearing what he wants." "You don't owe me anything." "Then why am I here?" Sam gestured to a chair near a small table. "Please, sit down. I promise this won't take long, and if you want to leave at any point, I won't stop you." Eleanor hesitated, then crossed the room and sat. Sam took the chair across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "I should explain something first," he said. "About who I am and why I was on that road yesterday." "I know who you are. Samuel Brennan. Biggest cattle operation in Montana Territory. Probably the richest man north of Denver." "Money's just numbers, Miss McAllister. It don't make a man worth knowing." Sam's voice was quiet. "What I meant was, I should explain why I was traveling alone." Eleanor waited. "My wife passed 7 years ago. Margaret." Sam's jaw tightened briefly. "She died giving birth to our first child. The baby didn't survive neither." "I'm sorry." "Thank you." He took a breath. "After that, I threw myself into work. Built the ranch bigger and bigger. Hired more men. Bought more land. Thought if I kept busy enough, the empty house wouldn't feel so empty." "Did it work?" "No, ma'am. It surely did not." Eleanor understood that feeling better than she wanted to admit. "Last month," Sam continued, "I got some news from a doctor in Helena. News that made me start thinking about things I'd been avoiding." "What kind of news?" Sam was quiet for a long moment. "The kind that makes a man consider what he's leaving behind." Eleanor's chest tightened. She didn't press further. "I started riding the territory alone," Sam said. "Visiting the land I own, the towns I do business in. Trying to figure out what all this work has been for." He looked directly at her. "Then my wagon wheel broke on a lonely road, and a woman I'd never met stopped to help me. That ain't nothing special. Anybody decent would have done the same." "No, ma'am, they wouldn't." Sam shook his head slowly. I've tested that theory more times than I can count. Most folks see a man in trouble and ride on by. The ones who stop usually want something in return. You're the first person in 7 years who helped me and asked for nothing. Eleanor shifted uncomfortably. I didn't know you were rich when I stopped. That's exactly my point. They sat in silence for a moment. The afternoon light stretched across the floor. Mr. Brennan? Sam. Sam. Eleanor folded her hands in her lap. I appreciate the supplies. Truly. They'll help the ranch more than you know. But I still don't understand what you want from me. Sam leaned back in his chair. I want to offer you a job. A job? 6 months ago, I bought a piece of land about 20 miles east of here. Good land. River access, natural shelter, perfect for cattle. But it needs someone to manage it. Someone who understands ranching, who ain't afraid of hard work, who'll treat the land with respect. You must have plenty of men who can do that. I got plenty of men who can follow orders. That ain't the same thing. Sam's eyes held hers. I need someone with character. Someone I can trust. When you refused my money yesterday and told me what your father taught you about kindness, I knew I'd found that person. Eleanor's heart pounded against her ribs. You want me to run a ranch for you, based on one conversation on a dusty road? I want you to partner with me on building something new. You'd have full authority over the operation, housing provided, salary plus a percentage of profits, and... Sam paused. I'd make sure your father's ranch stays yours. Pay off whatever you owe the bank. The room seemed to tilt sideways. That's... Eleanor gripped the arms of her chair. That's crazy. You don't even know me. I know enough. You know I can fix a wagon wheel. That don't mean I can run a whole operation. You've been running your father's ranch alone for 3 years. Drought-hard winters, no help, barely any money. Most men would have given up after the first season. Sam leaned forward again. Miss McAllister Ellie, you've already proven you can do this. You just haven't had the resources. Eleanor stood abruptly and walked to the window. Her reflection stared back at her pale and shocked. Why me? She whispered. There's got to be dozens of experienced ranchers who'd jump at this chance. Why pick some struggling woman who can barely keep her own place alive? Because those experienced ranchers would do it for the money. You'd do it because it matters. Sam rose and stepped closer, though he kept a respectful distance. I watched you work on that wagon wheel. You weren't just fixing it, you were taking care of it. Like the wood itself deserved your attention. That's rare. That's what the land needs. Eleanor pressed her palm against the cool glass. Outside, Copper Creek moved through its ordinary afternoon. People walking, wagons rolling. A world that didn't know her entire life might be changing inside this small hotel room. What if I fail? She asked quietly. Then we learn from it and try again. What if I say no? Then you keep the supplies, I pay off your bank debt anyway, and you never see me again. Sam's voice was gentle. This ain't a trap, Ellie. It's an offer. A real one. You can walk away right now, and I'll respect that completely. Eleanor turned to face him. He stood only a few feet away, his brown eyes steady and patient. No pressure, no manipulation. Just a man offering her something impossible and meaning every word. Can I think about it? She asked. Take all the time you need. How long are you in town? Through the end of the week. I got business at the bank tomorrow then. The bank. Eleanor's expression hardened. Silas Garrett. You mentioned him yesterday. Said you didn't trust him. I don't trust him because he's a snake in a suit. He's been buying up land all over this valley, pressuring folks to sell when times get hard. Something ain't right about it. Sam's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. What makes you say that? 3 families sold to him this summer alone. Good people, hard-working people. They didn't want to leave, but suddenly their loans got called early, or their water rights got questioned, or something else went wrong at exactly the worst time. Eleanor crossed her arms. That ain't bad luck. That's a pattern. Have you told anyone? Who'd listen? Silas Garrett owns half this town. The sheriff plays cards with him every Saturday night. The mayor's brother works at the bank. Eleanor laughed bitterly. Around here, Silas Garrett is the law. Sam was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. What? Eleanor asked. Nothing, just thinking. About what? About how interesting it is that a man like Garrett has been so eager to buy your ranch specifically. Eleanor frowned. What do you mean? Your land, McAllister Ranch, where exactly is it situated? 4 miles west of town past Miller Creek. Backs up against the foothills. And those foothills, they connect to the mountain passes, don't they? The old mining roads, yeah. Nobody uses them anymore. Mines dried up 15 years ago. Sam nodded slowly, like pieces of a puzzle were clicking into place. Miss McAllister, I think there might be more to Silas Garrett's interest in your land than simple expansion. What are you saying? I'm saying I'd like to do some investigating before I meet with him tomorrow. Sam walked to the small desk in the corner and picked up a leather satchel. In the meantime, I want you to think about my offer. Not because of Garrett or the bank or anything else. Think about whether this is something you want for yourself. Eleanor nodded slowly. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. She moved toward the door, then stopped with her hand on the handle. Sam? Yes. Why do you really care about what Silas Garrett is doing? You got enough land and money that his schemes shouldn't matter to you. Sam's expression softened. Because I spent 7 years building an empire and forgetting why I started building in the first place. Margaret used to say that power without purpose was just noise. He paused. I'm tired of making noise, Ellie. I want to do something that matters. Eleanor didn't know how to respond, so she simply nodded once and left. She was halfway down the stairs when she nearly collided with a man coming up. Pardon me, miss. The man stopped abruptly. Well, Eleanor McAllister. Eleanor's blood went cold. Silas Garrett stood before her, his silver hair slicked back, his smile revealing teeth that seemed too white and too sharp. He wore an expensive gray suit and carried a polished walking cane that she knew concealed a blade. Mr. Garrett, what brings you to the hotel? His eyes flicked toward the upstairs hallway. Meeting someone. Just passing through. Garrett stepped closer, forcing Eleanor back against the railing. I heard an interesting piece of news this morning. Something about a rather extravagant wagon delivery to your ranch. Eleanor kept her face neutral. News travels fast. In a small town, everything travels fast. Garrett's smile didn't reach his eyes. I hope you haven't done anything foolish, Miss McAllister. Taking gifts from strangers can be complicated. I can take care of myself. Can you? Because from where I stand, you're a woman alone 3 days from losing her ranch, suddenly receiving charity from a man nobody in this town knows. Garrett tilted his head. That looks suspicious. People might talk. Let them talk. Oh, they will. They'll wonder what you had to do to earn such generosity. They'll whisper about the desperate ranch girl who sold herself to the highest bidder. Garrett's voice dropped lower. Is that what you want, Eleanor? Your father's name dragged through the mud. Eleanor's hands clenched into fists. Don't you dare mention my father. Thomas McAllister was a good man, stubborn but good. He'd be heartbroken to see what's become of his legacy. Garrett sighed dramatically. But there's still time to salvage things. My offer stands. Sell me the ranch, walk away with enough money to start fresh somewhere else. No shame in that. I'd rather die. That can be arranged too. The words hung in the air, soft as silk and sharp as glass. Eleanor stared at him. Is that a threat? Garrett laughed lightly. Of course not. Just an observation about the dangers of the frontier. Accidents happen. Fires start. Horses throw their riders. He stepped back, adjusting his cuffs. I do hope you'll be careful, Miss McAllister. It would be such a tragedy to lose another McAllister so young. He continued up the stairs without looking back. Eleanor stood frozen on the landing, her heart hammering, her breath coming in short gasps. She'd known Silas Garrett was dangerous. She'd known he wanted her land. But she'd never heard him speak so openly about... She ran. Down the stairs, through the lobby, out onto the dusty street. She didn't stop until she reached Copper, who nickered nervously at her panicked approach. "Easy, girl. Easy." Eleanor pressed her forehead against the horse's neck, trying to slow her breathing. "We're okay. We're okay." But she wasn't okay. She wasn't anywhere close to okay. Silas Garrett had just threatened her life. And worse, he was headed up the stairs to where Samuel Brennan was staying. Eleanor's mind raced. Should she warn Sam? Should she ride for the sheriff? No, the sheriff was useless. Should she go to Martha? What could Martha do against a man like Garrett? "Think," she whispered fiercely. "Think." She could go back into the hotel. But Garrett would see her. He'd know she was connected to Sam, and that would make everything worse. She could wait outside, watch for Sam to leave, warn him then, or she could ride home and pretend none of this had happened. Let the rich men fight their own battles. Keep her head down. Survive. That last option was the smart one, the safe one. But Eleanor kept hearing Sam's voice in her head. "I want to do something that matters." And her father's voice. "The measure of a person ain't what they do when folks are watching." "Damn it," she breathed. She tied Copper to the post and walked back into the hotel. The clerk looked up. "Miss, can I help? Is there another way upstairs? A back staircase?" The clerk hesitated. "That's for staff only." Eleanor leaned across the desk. "Please, it's important." Something in her expression must have convinced him. He pointed toward a narrow door near the back of the lobby. "Through there. Turn left. Stairs at the end of the hall." "Thank you." She moved quickly, slipping through the door and into a dim corridor that smelled of lye soap and old wood. The back stairs creaked under her boots, but she climbed as quietly as she could. At the top, she paused. She could hear voices coming from Sam's room. The door must be open. "Appreciate you meeting with me, Mr. Brennan." Garrett's voice smooth as oil. "Wasn't aware we had a meeting scheduled." Sam's voice flat and guarded. "Consider it a courtesy call. I like to personally welcome distinguished visitors to our little town." A pause. "And to offer any assistance you might need during your stay." "That's generous of you." "I'm a generous man. Ask anyone." Eleanor crept closer, pressing herself against the wall just outside Sam's door. Through the crack, she could see a sliver of the room Garrett's back. Sam standing near the window. "I understand you have business at the bank tomorrow," Garrett continued. "Something about land transfers. Something like that. If you're looking to expand your holdings in this area, I might be able to help. I have extensive knowledge of available properties, prime locations that haven't hit the market yet. I appreciate the offer, but I prefer to conduct my own research." Of course. A man of your stature didn't build an empire by trusting others to do his work." Garrett's voice shifted slightly, taking on a harder edge. "I only mention it because I noticed you've already made contact with one of our local landowners, Eleanor McAllister." Eleanor held her breath. "Miss McAllister helped me with a wagon repair yesterday," Sam said calmly. "I was simply expressing my gratitude." "With a wagon full of supplies worth several $100s. That's quite a thank you. I can afford to be generous." "No doubt." Garrett was quiet for a moment. "But I should warn you, Mr. Brennan, Eleanor McAllister is not the innocent frontier woman she appears to be. She's in severe debt, desperate, willing to do anything to keep her failing ranch. The kind of woman who might attach herself to a wealthy stranger in hopes of improving her situation." Eleanor's nails dug into her palms. "Is that so?" Sam's voice remained neutral. "I've offered to buy her land several times at fair market value. She refuses out of misplaced pride. Frankly, she's a bad investment. Whatever she's told you, whatever arrangement she's trying to make, I'd advise you to walk away." Silence stretched. Then Sam spoke, and his voice had changed. Gone was the polite distance. In its place was something cold, something dangerous. "Mr. Garrett, let me be clear about something. I've built my operation by being an excellent judge of character, and in the 10 minutes I've known you, I've learned everything I need to know." "I beg your pardon." "Miss McAllister helped me when I was a stranger on the road. She asked for nothing. She refused payment. She treated me with kindness because that's who she is, not because she wanted anything from me." "Mr. Brennan, you, on the other hand, walked into my room uninvited, tried to undermine a woman who isn't here to defend herself, and assumed I was stupid enough to believe your lies." Sam's boots crossed the floor. Eleanor heard him moving closer to Garrett. "I don't know what game you're playing in this town, but I'm going to find out. And when I do, we're going to have a very different kind of conversation." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm making a promise. There's a difference." Silence again. Then Garrett laughed a brittle, artificial sound. "Well, I see Miss McAllister has already worked her magic. I hope you won't regret this, Mr. Brennan. The door is behind you." Footsteps. Eleanor pressed herself into a shallow alcove as Garrett emerged from the room and strode down the main hallway without looking back. She heard him descend the front stairs, heard the lobby door open and close. She let out a shaky breath. "You can come out now." Eleanor jumped. Sam stood in his doorway looking directly at her hiding spot. "How did you—" The back stairs creak. A hint of a smile crossed his face. "And I saw your shadow under the door." Eleanor stepped out, her cheeks flushing. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have eavesdropped. But I ran into him on the stairs, and he threatened me, and I wanted to warn you." "He threatened you." "Not outright, but close enough." Eleanor's voice shook slightly. "He talked about accidents, fires, people dying young." Sam's expression darkened. Just before he came up here, I tried to find a way to warn you without him seeing me." "Come inside. Tell me everything." Eleanor followed him into the room. Sam closed the door and gestured for her to sit, but she was too agitated. She paced instead, recounting every word Garrett had said. When she finished, Sam was silent for a long moment. "I was right," he finally said. "There's more going on here than simple land grabs." "What do you mean?" "I've been thinking about what you said. The pattern of families being forced to sell. The timing of their troubles. Garrett's particular interest in your ranch." Sam walked to the window and looked out at the street below. "Your land borders the old mining roads in the foothills. Those roads are useless. The mines are empty." "Are they?" Sam turned back to face her. "When I was researching properties in this area, I came across some interesting geological surveys. There's been speculation that the original miners didn't dig deep enough, that there might be more silver, and possibly copper, beneath what they extracted." Eleanor stared at him. "You think Garrett knows about this?" "I think Garrett has been systematically acquiring every piece of land that touches those mountain passes. I think he's planning something big, and your ranch is the last piece he needs. That's why he won't leave me alone. That's why he threatened you today. You're in his way, and he's getting impatient." Eleanor sank into the chair, her legs suddenly weak. "What do I do?" Sam crouched down in front of her, meeting her eyes. "You accept my offer. Tonight. We draw up papers that make you my business partner. The moment you're connected to me, Garrett can't touch you without starting a war he can't win. You'd do that, knowing what kind of enemy you're making." "Ellie." Sam's voice was firm. "I've been waiting 7 years to find something worth fighting for. I think I finally found it." Eleanor looked at him, this stranger who wasn't a stranger anymore. This wealthy, powerful man who'd knelt in the dirt to fix a wagon wheel and then turned her entire world upside down. "Why do you care what happens to me?" she whispered. "Because you're the first person in 7 years who reminded me why any of this matters." Sam reached out slowly, and took her hand. His palm was warm and calloused, a working man's hand, despite his wealth. "I can't promise this will be easy, but I can promise I'll stand beside you whatever comes." Eleanor's eyes stung with tears she refused to shed. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay. I'll do it. I'll be your partner." Sam smiled a real smile that reached his eyes and softened his entire face. "Then let's get to work." He stood and offered his hand to help her up. Eleanor took it. She didn't let go. The papers were signed before midnight. Sam had called for the hotel clerk to witness, and Eleanor had written her name on the partnership agreement with a hand that barely trembled. When the ink dried, Sam folded the documents carefully and locked them in his satchel. "First thing tomorrow, I'm filing these at the county records office," he said, "before Garrett can make a move." "He'll find out. I'm counting on it." Eleanor stood by the window watching the dark street below. Copper Creek had gone quiet for the night, but she couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere in those shadows, Silas Garrett was already planning his next move. "You should stay here tonight," Sam said. "It ain't safe to ride back to your ranch alone in the dark. I've ridden that road 1,000 times. Not with Garrett knowing you've become a problem for him." Eleanor turned. "I ain't afraid of Silas Garrett." "I know you ain't. That's what worries me." Sam crossed the room and stood beside her. "Fear keeps people cautious. You got courage, Ellie. But courage without caution gets folks killed." She wanted to argue, but the memory of Garrett's words "accidents happen, fires start" made her throat tighten. "There's a room next door," Sam continued. "I'll have the clerk arrange it. You can ride home at first light." Eleanor nodded slowly. "All right." "All right." Neither of them moved. "Sam." Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. "Yeah. Thank you. For believing in me. For standing up to him." She swallowed hard. "Nobody's done that for me since my pa died." Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out and gently touched her shoulder. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." Eleanor didn't sleep well. Every creak of the old hotel made her jolt awake, her heart pounding, her hand reaching for the knife she kept under her pillow. By the time pale light crept through the window, she was already dressed and pacing. A knock at her door made her freeze. "Ellie, it's Sam." She opened the door. Sam stood in the hallway, his face grim. "What's wrong?" "Garrett moved faster than I expected. The county clerk just sent word someone broke into the records office last night. Tried to destroy the land deed files." Eleanor's blood went cold. "My ranch?" "Among others. But the clerk's deputy heard the commotion and scared them off before they could finish." "Did they catch who did it?" "No, but we both know who's behind it." Eleanor grabbed her hat and pushed past Sam into the hallway. "I need to get home. Now." "I'm coming with you." "Sam." "Don't argue with me, Ellie. Not on this." They rode hard through the morning heat, pushing their horses faster than was wise on the rutted road. Eleanor's mind raced with terrible possibilities. Her cabin burned. Her livestock scattered, everything her father built reduced to ash and memory. But when McAllister Ranch came into view, it stood exactly as she'd left it. The cabin, the barn, the wooden arch with her father's brand, all untouched. Eleanor pulled Copper to a halt, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "It's okay. It's still here." Sam stopped beside her. "Garrett's playing a longer game. Breaking into the records office was a warning shot." "Warning us of what?" "That he can reach anything we try to protect." Sam's jaw tightened. "We need to move faster. Get the new ranch operational. Show him we ain't backing down. And then we figure out what he's really after, and make sure he never gets it." They spent the next 3 days working from before dawn until well after dark. Sam brought in supplies from his main ranch, more lumber tools, a small crew of trusted hands, led by a young foreman named Jake Wheeler, who looked at Eleanor with barely concealed skepticism. "So you're the woman boss wants running the East operation," Jake said on the first morning, his arms crossed, his tone flat. "I'm Eleanor McAllister, and I ain't running nothing yet. We're building it together." "With respect, ma'am, I've been working cattle since I was 12 years old. I ain't never taken orders from a woman." Eleanor stepped closer to him, close enough to see the stubble on his jaw and the doubt in his eyes. "Then today's a good day to learn something new." Jake's mouth twitched, almost a smile quickly suppressed. "We'll see." "Yeah, we will." By the end of the first day, Eleanor had matched Jake stride for stride in every task. She dug post holes until her palms bled. She hauled lumber until her shoulders screamed. When one of the horses spooked and nearly trampled a young hand, Eleanor was the one who grabbed its bridle and calmed it down with steady hands and a low, firm voice. Jake watched it all without comment. On the second evening, as the crew sat around a small fire eating beans and hardtack, Jake approached Eleanor where she stood alone checking the fence line they'd built that day. "That was good work," he said gruffly. "With the horse." "Thanks. My sister got kicked by a horse when she was 9, never walked right after." Jake stared at the darkening horizon. "Takes guts to grab a spooked animal like that." "Takes stubbornness mostly. My pa always said I had more of that than sense." Jake almost smiled. "Sound like a smart man." "He was the best man I ever knew." They stood in silence for a moment. "I'll talk to the boys," Jake said finally. "Make sure they give you a fair chance." "I appreciate that." "Don't thank me yet. You still gotta prove yourself." "I plan to." Jake nodded once and walked back toward the fire. Eleanor watched him go, allowing herself a small moment of hope. The third day brought trouble. Sam had ridden into town to file the partnership papers properly, this time with armed guards watching the clerk's office. Eleanor was overseeing the frame construction of the new bunkhouse when a rider appeared on the ridge overlooking the worksite. Silas Garrett. He sat motionless on his black horse, watching them work, making no move to approach. Just watching. Jake noticed him first. "That's the banker, ain't it?" "Yeah." "Want me to run him off?" "No." Eleanor's voice was steady, though her heart pounded. "He's on public land. Ain't nothing we can do. He's trying to spook us." "I know. Don't let him see it's working." They continued working, but the mood had shifted. The men glanced toward the ridge every few minutes. Their hammers fell slower. Their laughter died. Garrett stayed for 2 hours. Then, without a word, he turned his horse and rode away. That night, Eleanor couldn't eat. She sat on the porch of her cabin, watching the stars emerge one by one, her father's old rifle across her knees. Sam found her there when he returned from town. "Papers are filed," he said, settling into the chair beside her. "Witnessed, stamped, and locked in the county safe." "Good." "Jake told me about Garrett showing up. He's trying to scare us. Is it working?" Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. "When I was 16, a mountain lion came down from the hills during a hard winter. Killed 3 of our calves before Pa and I tracked it to its den." She gripped the rifle tighter. "Pa said the lion wasn't evil, just hungry and desperate. But that didn't make it less dangerous. He said the only way to deal with a predator is to show it you ain't prey." "What happened to the lion?" "I shot it." Eleanor's voice was flat. "Took 2 tries. The first bullet just made it angry. It charged at Pa, knocked him down. I thought—" Her voice caught. "I thought I was gonna watch him die, but I reloaded and fired again. Hit it right between the eyes." Sam said nothing. "That night Pa told me I had the heart of a warrior. Said he'd never been prouder." Eleanor finally looked at Sam. "I ain't been that brave since he died. Lost my nerve somewhere along the way. Started just trying to survive instead of fight. And now I remember what it feels like to stand up instead of hide." She set the rifle aside. Silas Garrett ain't a mountain lion. He's just a man. Men can be beaten. Sam reached over and took her hand. His grip was warm and solid. You ain't alone in this fight, Ellie. Whatever comes, we face it together. Together, she repeated softly. They sat like that for a long time, hands clasped, watching the stars wheel overhead. A week passed. The new ranch took shape faster than Eleanor had dared hope. The bunkhouse frame went up. The corral fencing was completed. Jake and his crew had stopped questioning Eleanor's orders and started anticipating them. Something that might have been respect had begun to grow. Then the fever came. It started small, Sam coughing during dinner, waving off Eleanor's concern with a tired smile. Dust in my throat, nothing more. But by the next morning, he couldn't get out of bed. Eleanor found him shivering under 3 blankets, his skin pale and damp, his breath coming in shallow rasps. She pressed her hand to his forehead and felt the terrifying heat burning beneath his skin. Sam, can you hear me? His eyes fluttered open. Ellie. I'm here. You're burning up. I'm gonna fetch the doctor. No. Sam grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. No doctor. You're sick. Really sick. I know. He coughed a deep, wet sound that made Eleanor's stomach clench. I've been sick for a while now. The doctor in Helena told me months ago. Eleanor went still. Told you what? My lungs. Sam closed his eyes. Something growing inside them. He said I had maybe a year if I was lucky. The world tilted sideways. Eleanor gripped the edge of the bed to keep from falling. You knew, she whispered. All this time. The partnership, the ranch, finding someone to run it, you knew you were dying. I should have told you. Yeah. You should have. I was afraid you'd say no. Afraid you'd think I was using you. Eleanor's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. Were you using me? No. Sam's hand found hers again. I was trying to give you something that would last, something that would matter after I'm gone. You think I care about the ranch? Eleanor's voice cracked. You think that's why I agreed to any of this? Then why? She couldn't answer, didn't trust herself to speak. Ellie. Sam's voice was weak but certain. I ain't afraid of dying. I made my peace with that months ago. But I am afraid of leaving this world without making something good, without helping someone who deserves better than life's given them. He squeezed her hand. You're that someone. You always were. From the moment you stopped on that road to help a stranger. Eleanor bowed her head. Tears fell onto their joined hands. Don't you dare die on me, she whispered fiercely. Not yet. Not when I just found... She stopped herself. Found what? Sam asked. Eleanor lifted her head. She looked at this man, this stubborn, generous, dying man, who had turned her whole world upside down. Something worth fighting for, she said. Sam smiled weakly. That goes both ways. Eleanor wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm getting the doctor whether you like it or not. And you're gonna rest and let me take care of things. You hear me? Yes, ma'am. Good. She stood, but Sam didn't let go of her hand. Ellie. Yeah. Thank you for not running. She squeezed his fingers gently. I'm done running. From anything. The doctor came that afternoon, old Dr. Harmon, who'd delivered half the babies in Copper Creek and buried just as many. He examined Sam carefully, listened to his chest, mixed powders into water, and made him drink. When he stepped outside to speak with Eleanor, his face was grave. The fever's bad, but it ain't what's gonna kill him. It's what's underneath. I know, he told me. Doctor. Harmon nodded slowly. Man's got a few months at most. Probably less. The fever's just weakening him faster. Is there anything you can do? Keep him comfortable. Keep him rested. Pray if you're the praying type. Eleanor looked back at the cabin. And if I ain't, then fight like hell for every day he's got left. Dr. Harmon gathered his bag. That man's got more reason to live now than he's had in years. I saw it in his eyes when he talked about you. Sometimes that's worth more than medicine. After the doctor left, Eleanor sat beside Sam's bed and watched him sleep. His breathing was ragged but steady. The fever had broken slightly. His color was better. "Stubborn fool," she murmured. "Coming all this way just to find me. Like I was worth dying for." She took his hand and held it through the night. By morning, Sam was awake and demanding to get back to work. "Absolutely not," Eleanor said firmly. "I ain't gonna lie here and rot while Garrett makes his moves. You're gonna rest until the fever's completely gone. That's final." "Since when do you give me orders?" "Since you made me your partner." Eleanor crossed her arms. "You want me to run this operation, then I'm running it. And right now my first order is for you to stay in that bed." Sam glared at her. Eleanor glared back. Finally, he laughed a weak, breathless sound that turned into a cough. "You're a tyrant, Eleanor McAllister. Learned from the best. Your pa, Martha Jenkins, that woman could make a rattlesnake apologize for biting her." Sam settled back against the pillows. "Fine, one more day. But you keep me informed of everything that happens. Deal." Eleanor turned to leave, but Sam's voice stopped her. "Ellie." "Yeah. Last night. What you said about finding something worth fighting for." His eyes met hers. "Did you mean it?" Eleanor stood in the doorway, her heart pounding. "Yeah," she said softly. "I meant it." Sam smiled a real smile that reached his eyes despite the exhaustion. "Good, because I meant what I said too, about you being worth everything I've got left to give." Eleanor didn't trust herself to respond. She simply nodded once and walked outside where the morning sun was burning hot, and the work was waiting, and somewhere out there Silas Garrett was planning his next attack. But none of that mattered as much as the man lying in her cabin fighting for breath, fighting for time, fighting to give her a future she'd never dared imagine. For the first time since her father died, Eleanor McAllister felt something other than alone, and that terrified her more than anything Silas Garrett could ever do. 3 days later, Sam was finally strong enough to sit on the porch. Eleanor brought him coffee and watched him drink it slowly, his hands still trembling slightly. "You look better," she said. "Feel like I've been trampled by a herd of buffalo." Sam set down the cup. "But I'll live. For now." "Don't talk like that." "It's the truth, Ellie. We both know it." Eleanor sat down beside him. "The truth is, you're still breathing. Everything else is just guessing." Sam smiled weakly. "You're stubborn. You keep saying that like it's an insult." "It ain't. It's the thing I admire most about you." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Sam's expression shifted. "Jake came by this morning, while you were checking the fence line." Eleanor tensed. "What did he say?" "Garrett's been busy. Bought out the Miller family yesterday, and the Crawfords the day before. That's everyone between my land and the mountain passes. Except you." Eleanor's jaw tightened. "He's closing in. Like a wolf circling a wounded deer." Sam coughed, then steadied himself. "But you ain't wounded, Ellie, and you sure as hell ain't prey. What do you think he'll do next?" "Something big, something that forces your hand." Sam reached for her arm. "Promise me you won't face him alone." "I can handle—" "Promise me." Eleanor looked at his hand on her arm, at the desperation in his eyes. This man who'd given her everything asking for one small thing in return. "I promise," she said. But even as she spoke the words, she knew some promises were impossible to keep. The attack came 2 nights later. Eleanor was sleeping in the cabin when Copper's frantic neighing jolted her awake. She grabbed her rifle and ran outside in her nightgown, bare feet slapping against the wooden porch. Fire. Her barn was burning. "No!" Eleanor sprinted toward the flames, her mind racing. The horses, the feed, the tools. Everything she'd rebuilt was inside that barn. She threw open the corral gate and grabbed Copper's halter, dragging the terrified horse away from the heat. 2 other horses followed, wild-eyed and panicking. "Eleanor!" Jake's voice cut through the roar of the flames. He came running from the bunkhouse shirtless, pulling on his boots. "Get back. The whole thing's gonna go. Help me with the animals." Together they herded the livestock away from the inferno. Other ranch hands appeared, some carrying buckets, others just staring in shock at the destruction. "Waterline!" Eleanor shouted. "Form a bucket chain from the creek. Move!" The men scrambled to obey. Eleanor worked alongside them, hauling water until her arms burned and her lungs ached from smoke. But it was useless. The barn was too far gone. By dawn, nothing remained but smoldering ruins and ash. Eleanor stood in the midst of the destruction, her nightgown streaked with soot, her hands blistered from the bucket handles. Jake approached carefully. "Found something," he said quietly. "Around back." He led her to the rear of what had been the barn. There, driven into the ground like a grave marker, was a single wooden stake with a note nailed to it. Eleanor pulled the note free and read it aloud. "Last chance. Sell or lose everything. There won't be another warning." "Garrett," Jake said. "Obviously." Eleanor crumpled the note in her fist. "He wants me scared. Wants me to run." "Are you scared?" Eleanor turned to face him, her eyes blazing. "I'm furious." "What are you gonna do?" Eleanor looked at the smoking ruins, at her exhausted men, at the land her father had loved and died protecting. "I'm gonna finish what he started," she said. "One way or another." Sam took the news harder than Eleanor expected. "This is my fault," he said, struggling to rise from the bed where Eleanor had insisted he stay. "If I hadn't brought you into this, you didn't bring me into anything. Garrett's been after my land for years. This was coming whether you showed up or not. But now you're a bigger target. Because of me. Because of the partnership." "Good." Eleanor pushed him gently back against the pillows. "Let him come at me with everything he's got. At least now I've got the resources to fight back. Resources don't matter if you're dead, Ellie. I ain't planning on dying. Nobody ever does." Eleanor knelt beside the bed and took his face in her hands. "Listen to me. I spent 3 years after my pa died just surviving, just holding on. I forgot what it felt like to actually live." She held his gaze. "You reminded me. This fight, this partnership, all of it reminded me that there's more to life than not dying." Sam's eyes glistened. "Ellie, I ain't gonna let Silas Garrett take that away. Not from me. Not from you. Not from anyone else in this valley. You can't fight him alone. Then help me figure out how to fight him together." Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then something shifted in his expression, the defeated look giving way to something sharper, something alive. "The geological surveys," he said slowly. "The ones I mentioned before. If I'm right about what Garrett's after, that information could be powerful." "Powerful how?" "If there's really valuable minerals under those mountain passes, and if Garrett's been using illegal methods to force people off their land to access them, that's not just corruption. That's federal territory. Mining rights on that land would need government approval." Eleanor's pulse quickened. "You're saying we could expose him?" "I'm saying we could ruin him, but we'd need proof, documents, witnesses willing to talk. The families who sold, the Millers, the Crawfords, they might know something. Would they talk? Only one way to find out." Eleanor found Martha at her restaurant the next morning. The older woman took one look at Eleanor's smoke-stained clothes and haunted eyes and pulled her into the back room. "I heard about the fire. Whole town's talking." "Garrett's work. He left a note." Martha's face hardened. "That snake. Somebody needs to put him down." "That's what I'm trying to do, but I need help." Eleanor leaned forward. "The families who sold to Garrett. Do you know where they went?" "The Millers headed to Helena. Got family there. The Crawfords?" Martha hesitated. I heard they went to Billings, but I ain't certain. I need to talk to them. Find out exactly what happened when Garrett pressured them to sell. There might be something illegal we can use. Martha studied her carefully. You're really going to take him on directly? I don't have a choice anymore. He's not going to stop until I'm gone, or he is. It's dangerous, Ellie. Garrett's got powerful friends. People who'd look the other way while what burns down my barn threatens my life. He's already doing all of that. Eleanor's voice cracked. I'm done being scared, Martha. I'm done waiting for him to decide when and how he destroys me. It's time to fight back. Martha reached across the table and gripped Eleanor's hand. Your mama would be proud of you. So would Thomas. Help me, please. You know everyone in this town. You hear things. What do you need? Names. Anyone who's had trouble with Garrett. Anyone who might have seen something, heard something, knows something. Eleanor squeezed Martha's hand. And I need to know who we can trust. Martha nodded slowly. Give me 2 days. I'll find out what I can. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, child. This is just the beginning. Eleanor returned to find Sam out of bed, sitting at her kitchen table with papers spread before him. You're supposed to be resting. I'm supposed to be helping you win. He gestured at the papers. These are copies of the geological surveys I mentioned. Had them sent from my office in Helena. Eleanor sat down across from him. What do they show? Exactly what I suspected. The original miners in these hills barely scratched the surface. There's a significant copper deposit running through the mountain passes right underneath the land Garrett's been buying. Copper. Copper's worth more than silver these days. Telegraph lines, electrical equipment, industrial machinery, everyone wants copper. Sam tapped the papers. If Garrett controls access to these deposits, he'd be one of the richest men in the territory. And if we can prove he's been using illegal methods to get that control, then we can stop him. Maybe even put him in prison. Eleanor's heart pounded. For the first time since the fire hope flickered in her chest. What do we need? Proof of fraud, forged documents, threats, bribery. Anything that shows Garrett wasn't just making business deals, he was breaking the law to force people out. The families who sold might have kept records, contracts, letters. It's worth checking. Sam paused. But Ellie, there's something else you should know. What? Garrett filed papers yesterday at the county office. He's claiming your land was improperly surveyed when your father bought it. Says the boundaries are wrong, and part of your ranch actually belongs to public territory. Eleanor's blood ran cold. That's a lie. Of course it is. But if he can tie you up in legal battles long enough, he can drain your resources, force you to sell just to pay the lawyers. I don't have money for lawyers. I do. Sam met her eyes. But it might not be enough. Garrett's got the county judge in his pocket. We need to take this over his head. Federal level. Federal how? I have contacts in Washington, men I've done business with over the years. If I can get word to them about what Garrett's doing, the land fraud, the mining scheme, all of it, they might send investigators. That could take weeks, months, which is why we need to stall him here while we build our case. Sam stood slowly, bracing himself against the table. And that starts with finding witnesses willing to talk. Eleanor stood too. I'll ride to Helena tomorrow. Find the Millers. Take Jake with you. I don't need... Ellie. Sam's voice was firm. You promised you wouldn't face this alone. She remembered. She'd hoped he'd forgotten. Fine. Jake comes with me. Thank you. Sam swayed slightly, and Eleanor quickly moved to steady him. Her hands pressed against his chest, feeling his heart beat beneath the thin fabric of his shirt. You're still weak, she said softly. You need to rest. I need to help you. You are helping, just by being here, by believing in me. Sam's hand came up to cover hers, where it rested against his chest. I more than believe in you, Ellie. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Neither had dared speak aloud. Sam. I know. His voice was barely a whisper. I know I ain't got the right. A dying man with nothing to offer but trouble. But I need you to know, whatever happens, whatever comes next, meeting you on that road was the best thing that ever happened to me. Eleanor's eyes burned with tears. Don't talk like you're already gone. I ain't gone yet. And I don't plan to leave until I know you're safe. He lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her palm. That's my promise to you. Eleanor couldn't speak. Couldn't think. Could only stand there with his warmth against her skin and his eyes holding hers like she was the only thing in the world worth seeing. Then a horse's whinny broke the moment. Eleanor pulled back, wiping her eyes quickly. Someone's coming. She grabbed her rifle and moved to the window. A single rider approached, moving fast, kicking up dust along the road. It's Jake, she said, frowning. Something's wrong. Jake didn't bother dismounting. He pulled his horse up short in front of the cabin and shouted, Garrett's moving. He's got men riding toward the east property right now. 20 of them at least. Eleanor's stomach dropped. The new ranch. He's gonna take it. Claim it's abandoned property since there ain't nobody living there yet. He can't do that. He's doing it. Jake's horse pranced nervously. What do you want us to do? Eleanor looked back at Sam, then at Jake, then at the horizon where her future was being stolen out from under her. Get the men, she said. All of them. We ride now. Ellie, Sam started. Stay here. You're too weak to fight. I ain't gonna let you. This isn't a discussion. Eleanor grabbed her hat and her rifle. I made you a promise that I wouldn't face Garrett alone. Well, I won't. I'll have Jake and the boys. But I need you to stay alive. I need you to send those letters to Washington. I need you to be here when I get back. Sam's jaw clenched. And if you don't come back. Eleanor paused at the door. She looked at this man who had changed everything, who had given her hope and purpose, and something that felt dangerously close to love. Then you make sure everyone knows what Silas Garrett really is, she said. You burn him to the ground. You hear me. I hear you. Good. She walked out the door without looking back. 12 riders thundered across the Montana plains as the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly. Eleanor rode at the front, her rifle across her lap, her jaw set with determination. Jake pulled alongside her. You got a plan. Get there first. Establish presence. Make it clear the land ain't abandoned. And if Garrett's men fight, then we fight back. That could mean killing. Eleanor's grip tightened on the reins. I know what it means. They crested the final ridge and saw the east property spread out below them. The half-built structures, the corrals, the beginning of something real, and surrounding it all, 20 men on horseback. Garrett's men. Eleanor pulled Copper to a halt. Her riders stopped behind her. They got us outnumbered, Jake said quietly. Ain't the first time I've faced bad odds. What do you want to do? Eleanor studied the scene below. Garrett's men hadn't seen them yet. They were spread out, some dismounting, others riding the perimeter like they owned the place. In the center of it all, sitting tall on his black horse, was Silas Garrett himself. He came personally, Eleanor murmured. Wanted to watch. That man's got a twisted sense of victory. Yeah, he does. Eleanor took a deep breath. Jake, take 5 men and circle around to the west. Stay out of sight until I give the signal. What signal? You'll know it when you hear it. Jake hesitated, then nodded. He gestured to 5 riders, and they peeled off, disappearing behind the ridge. Eleanor turned to the remaining men. Stay close. Don't draw weapons unless they do. And whatever happens, don't run. We show fear we've already lost. The men nodded grimly. Eleanor nudged Copper forward and began the descent toward the east property. Garrett saw her coming when she was about 100 yards out. He smiled, that cold, snake-like smile she'd come to hate. Miss McAllister, he called out. What a pleasant surprise. Eleanor stopped her horse 20 feet from where Garrett sat. Her men fanned out behind her. "Get off my land, Garrett." "Your land," Garrett chuckled. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. According to county records, this property was never properly transferred. It belongs to the territory, which means anyone can claim it. Those records are forged and you know it." "Do I?" "The county clerk seems to think they're genuine." Garrett shrugged. "But I'm a reasonable man. I'm willing to let you walk away right now, no harm done. Just turn around and go back to your father's little ranch. Enjoy what time you have left there." "And if I don't?" Garrett's smile disappeared. "Then things get unpleasant." Eleanor looked at the men surrounding her. 20 against 7. Bad odds, very bad odds. But she thought about Sam lying in her cabin fighting to stay alive. She thought about her father building their ranch from nothing. She thought about Martha and Jake and everyone who'd put their faith in her. She thought about the woman she'd been 3 weeks ago, defeated alone, ready to give up. That woman was gone. "I ain't leaving," Eleanor said. "This is my land, my partner's land. And if you want to take it, you're gonna have to go through me." Garrett sighed theatrically. "I was hoping you'd say that." He raised his hand. His men drew their weapons. Eleanor didn't flinch. "Now," she said calmly. A rifle shot cracked across the valley. The shot wasn't aimed at anyone. Jake had fired into the air from the western ridge, and suddenly Garrett's men realized they weren't just facing 7 riders. They were surrounded. Eleanor's hidden reinforcements emerged from the ridgeline, Jake and his 5 men, plus another group that made Eleanor's heart stop. Sam. He sat on a borrowed horse at the crest of the hill, flanked by a dozen riders Eleanor had never seen before. Men in clean clothes with federal badges glinting on their chests. "What the hell?" Garrett spun his horse, his face twisting with confusion. "That would be the United States Marshal's office," Eleanor said, allowing herself a small smile. "Seems your friends in Washington ain't as friendly as you thought." "This is impossible. I sent those letters 3 days ago." "You sent them." Sam urged his horse forward, descending toward the standoff. His voice was weak but steady. "I sent mine 2 weeks ago, when I first suspected what you were doing." Garrett's face went pale. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Sam stopped beside Eleanor, breathing hard from the exertion. "Marshal Crawford, would you care to explain to Mr. Garrett why you're here?" A stern-faced man with a gray mustache rode forward. His badge caught the sunlight. "Silas Garrett, you're under investigation for land fraud, forgery of federal documents, bribery of territorial officials, and conspiracy to illegally claim mining rights on government land." "This is ridiculous. I'm a respected businessman." "You're a criminal." Marshal Crawford's voice cut like a blade. "We've got testimony from the Miller family, the Crawfords, 6 other families you pressured into selling. We've got forged survey documents with your signature. And we've got a very detailed letter from Mr. Brennan here explaining exactly what you've been planning." Garrett's eyes darted between the marshals, his own men, and Eleanor. She watched the calculation happening behind his eyes, fight or flee. "Don't," she said quietly. "It's over." "It ain't over until I say it's over." Garrett's hand moved toward his coat. Eleanor raised her rifle before anyone else could react. "Touch that gun and I'll put a bullet through your hand." "You wouldn't dare." "Try me." They stared at each other across 20 feet of dusty ground. Eleanor's finger rested on the trigger, steady as stone. All the fear, all the doubt, all the years of struggling alone, she poured it all into that unwavering aim. Garrett saw it in her eyes. Whatever he was looking for, whatever weakness he expected to find, it wasn't there. Slowly he raised his hands. "Smart choice," Marshal Crawford said. He nodded to his men. "Take him." 2 marshals dismounted and approached Garrett. They pulled him from his horse none too gently and bound his wrists with rope. "This isn't finished," Garrett hissed as they led him away. "I have lawyers. I have connections. I'll be out by morning." You'll be in a federal prison by morning, Crawford replied. Your connections can't help you where you're going. Garrett's men looked at each other uncertainly. Without their leader, without the promise of easy money, they had no reason to fight. Anyone else want trouble? Jake called out his rifle trained on the nearest rider. One by one, Garrett's men holstered their weapons and rode away. Eleanor lowered her rifle slowly. Her arms were trembling. Her whole body was trembling. Ellie. Sam's voice reached her through the fog of adrenaline. It's done. You did it. She turned to look at him. He was pale, exhausted, barely staying upright in the saddle. But he was smiling. We did it, she corrected. Together. Sam swayed dangerously. Sam? Eleanor spurred Copper forward and grabbed his arm just as he started to slide. Someone help me? Jake was there in seconds. Together they eased Sam down from his horse and laid him on the ground. His eyes fluttered. Should have stayed in bed, he murmured. Yeah, you should have. Eleanor's voice cracked. You stubborn fool. Learned it from you. Don't joke, not now. Sam's hand found hers. I'm okay, just tired. Riding took more out of me than I expected. You rode all the way out here, in your condition, with federal marshals. Couldn't let you face him alone. You promised you wouldn't remember. Eleanor laughed despite the tears streaming down her face. I had Jake. Jake's good, but I'm better. You're impossible, and you love me for it. The words hung in the air. Eleanor went still. Sam's eyes held hers serious now despite his exhaustion. Don't you... Eleanor couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Everything she'd been afraid to feel. Everything she'd been running from since the moment he rode into her life, it all crashed over her at once. Yeah, she whispered. I do. Sam smiled, that real full smile that transformed his entire face. Good. Because I love you too. Have since you refused my money on that dusty road. That was barely 3 weeks ago. Sometimes you just know. Marshal Crawford approached, clearing his throat awkwardly. Mr. Brennan, we should get you back to town. There's a doctor there. I have a doctor, Sam said, at the McAllister Ranch. That's further away. I don't care. That's where I want to be. Crawford looked at Eleanor. She nodded firmly. You heard the man. He's going home. They built a makeshift stretcher and carried Sam back to the ranch. Eleanor rode beside him the entire way, her hand never leaving his. By nightfall, Dr. Harmon had examined him again and declared that rest and proper care might give him more time than expected. The fever was gone. His lungs sounded clearer. I ain't saying it's a miracle, Dr. Harmon told Eleanor quietly. But I've seen stranger things. Man's got a reason to live now. That counts for something. Eleanor stood in the doorway of her cabin, watching Sam sleep. He looked peaceful for the first time since she'd met him. You love him. Martha's voice came from behind her. Eleanor didn't turn around. Is it that obvious? Child, it's been obvious since you walked into my restaurant looking like you'd been struck by lightning. Martha joined her in the doorway. The question is, what you're gonna do about it. He's dying, Martha. We're all dying, some faster than others. That ain't the same thing. Isn't it? Martha put a gentle hand on Eleanor's shoulder. Your pa could have lived another 20 years. Sickness took him anyway. My husband was healthy as a horse until a runaway cart killed him on Main Street. She squeezed gently. We don't get to choose how much time we have. We only get to choose what we do with it. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. He asked me to run the new ranch with him, as partners. And I said yes. But, Eleanor finally turned to face her. But I'm scared, Martha. I'm scared of loving someone and losing them again. I'm scared that all of this, the ranch, the partnership, him, is just gonna disappear. That I'll wake up one day and be alone again. Martha took Eleanor's face in her weathered hands. Listen to me. Fear is a liar. It tells you to protect yourself by not feeling anything. But that ain't protection, that's just dying while you're still alive. She smiled gently. Your mama was afraid too, you know. When she married your pa, she'd already lost a fiancé to influenza. She was terrified of loving again. I didn't know that. There's a lot about your mama you don't know. But here's what matters. She chose love anyway. She chose your pa, chose this ranch, chose you. And even though she only got 11 years with him before the fever took her, she told me once that she wouldn't trade a single day. Because those 11 years were worth more than a lifetime of playing it safe. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Don't waste whatever time you've got, Martha said. That man in there loves you, and you love him. That's rare and precious and worth fighting for. It's worth everything. Martha left as quietly as she'd come. Eleanor stayed in the doorway for a long time watching Sam breathe. Then she walked into the cabin, pulled a chair beside the bed, and took his hand. I'm here, she whispered, and I ain't going anywhere. 3 months passed. The new ranch flourished. Cattle arrived from Sam's main operation, filling the corrals and pastures with life. Jake proved himself invaluable, running the day-to-day operations with skill and dedication. The crew grew to respect Eleanor, not just as a partner, but as a leader. McAllister Ranch was rebuilt too. The new barn stood taller and stronger than the old one. New fences lined the property. Eleanor's father's brand hung proudly over the entrance, polished and restored. Silas Garrett's trial made territorial news. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Forged documents bribed officials, threatened families. He was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. His landholdings were seized and redistributed to the families he'd cheated. The Millers came back. So did the Crawfords. Copper Creek started to heal. And Sam, against all expectations, grew stronger. Don't make sense, Dr. Harmon admitted during his monthly visit. His lungs should be getting worse, not better. But they're clearer than they were 6 months ago. What does that mean? Eleanor asked. Means I was wrong about something. Maybe the diagnosis. Maybe the timeline. Maybe both. The doctor shrugged. Or maybe he's just too stubborn to die when someone's waiting for him to live. Sam laughed at that, a full, healthy laugh that made Eleanor's heart soar. I told you, he said after Dr. Harmon left. Wasn't planning on going anywhere. You and your promises. I keep them. Eventually. Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed, their bed now in the new house they'd built together on the east property. The doctor says you might have years instead of months. Does that change things? It changes everything. Does it change how you feel? Eleanor looked at him, this man who'd appeared on a dusty road with a broken wagon wheel and turned her whole world upside down. This man who'd given her hope when she had none. Who'd fought beside her when everyone else had abandoned her. Who'd loved her when she'd forgotten how to let anyone in. No, she said softly. It doesn't change that at all. Sam reached for her hand. Marry me. Eleanor's breath caught. I know I ain't got much to offer anymore. The doctors might be wrong. I might have a month or a year or 20 years, nobody knows. Sam's grip tightened. But whatever time I've got, I want to spend it with you. Building something real. Building a family. Building a life. Sam. You don't have to answer now. I know it's a lot to ask. I know you've been hurt, and I know you're scared, and I know... Yes. Sam stopped mid-sentence. What? Yes. Eleanor squeezed his hand. I'll marry you. Today, tomorrow, whenever you want. I don't care about how much time we have. I care about who I spend it with. Sam stared at her like she'd just handed him the sun. You mean it? I mean it. He pulled her toward him and kissed her gentle at first, then deeper, like a man who'd been wandering in the desert and finally found water. Eleanor kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into that single moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sam pressed his forehead against hers. I love you, Eleanor McAllister. I love you too, Samuel Brennan. Partners. Partners. In everything. They were married 2 weeks later in Copper Creek's small church. Martha cried through the entire ceremony. Jake stood as Sam's witness, looking uncomfortable in a borrowed suit. Half the town turned out to watch the struggling ranch girl marry the cattle baron who'd changed everything. Reverend Hartley spoke about love and perseverance and the mysterious ways life brought people together. But Eleanor barely heard him. She was too busy looking at Sam standing tall despite his illness, his eyes bright with joy, his hand steady in hers. When the Reverend pronounced them man and wife, the church erupted in cheers. Eleanor McAllister became Eleanor Brennan, and for the first time in her life, she didn't feel alone. The years that followed weren't easy. Nothing worthwhile ever was. Sam's health went through seasons: good months and bad months, strength and weakness, hope and fear. But he stayed. He fought. He refused to give up on the life they were building. Eleanor ran the combined operations with a skill that surprised everyone except Sam. She expanded the cattle herds, negotiated fair prices with Eastern buyers, and became known throughout the territory as a woman who kept her word and treated her workers with respect. Jake eventually married a schoolteacher from Helena. They had 3 children who called Eleanor Aunt Ellie and ran wild across the ranch every summer. Martha's restaurant became the unofficial gathering place for half the valley. She claimed she was too old to keep working, but somehow never managed to actually retire. And on quiet evenings, when the work was done and the stars came out over Montana, Eleanor and Sam would sit on the porch of their home and watch the land they'd built together. "You ever think about that day?" Sam asked one evening. "The broken wagon wheel." "Sometimes." Eleanor leaned against his shoulder. "Mostly I think about how close I came to just riding by." "Why didn't you?" My pa's voice in my head, telling me to be the person I was raised to be, not the person circumstances were trying to make me. Sam kissed the top of her head. Thomas McAllister was a wise man. He was, but he also told me something else. "What's that?" Eleanor looked up at him. "He said that kindness given freely was worth more than gold. I believed that when I stopped to help you, but I didn't understand what it really meant until now." "And what does it mean?" "It means that when you give without expecting anything back, you open yourself up to receive things you never could have imagined." She smiled. "I gave you an hour of my time and some rope. You gave me a home, a purpose, a family. You gave me you." Sam pulled her closer. "Best trade I ever made." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars wheeled overhead. "Ellie, yeah, thank you." "For what?" "For stopping. For helping. For not giving up on me, on us when things got hard." Sam's voice was thick with emotion. "For reminding me that there's more to life than just surviving." Eleanor took his hand, that strong, calloused hand that had held hers through fire and fear and everything in between. "You're welcome," she said simply. And somewhere out there beyond the hills and the valleys and the endless Montana sky, Eleanor's father smiled. Because his daughter had finally found what she'd been searching for all along. Not just a ranch or a partnership or even a love story. She'd found home. And home, Eleanor understood now, wasn't a place you were born into or a building you constructed. Home was what you built with the people who chose to stand beside you. Home was what happened when you stopped running and started fighting for something worth keeping. Home was a broken wagon wheel on a dusty road, a stranger's kindness, and the courage to believe that sometimes, just sometimes, life gives you exactly what you need at exactly the right moment. Eleanor Brennan had been a struggling ranch girl with nothing but her father's dream and her own stubborn heart. Now she was something more. She was proof that even in the hardest times, even when everything seemed lost, one small act of kindness could change the course of a life forever. And that was a truth worth telling, worth remembering, for as long as stories were told around fires and whispered to children and carried on the wind across the wild, beautiful, unforgiving American West. The wagon wheel that broke on that lonely road had been the beginning. But Eleanor's story, their story, would never truly end. Because love, real love, echoes across generations. And kindness, freely given, always finds its way back home.